Are you insane, Beck Yziel? You're trying to resist me. Her hand trembled violently, but the shard kept digging deeper all the same. Terror flooded her eyes as the demon snarled. Know your limits, you foolish girl. You nearly severed your own lifeline just now. The voice was no longer mocking. It was confused, angry, and just a little afraid. Beck Yziel stomped the ground weakly, as if even that movement carried defiance. Are you mocking me? Is my control over you somehow weakening? The demon hissed. I gave you wealth. I gave you glory. Its disbelief was turning into panic. I gave you every desire your heart ever begged for. I did all of that so no one would ever dare look down on you again. The voice rose with each word, sounding more desperate the more it tried to sound dominant. Beck Yziel stood motionless in the blood-soaked room, her clothes and skin stained red. Across from her, the other personality hissed and writhed like something trapped, furious that its control was slipping. So the real Beck Yziel finally decides to show herself. The alter ego's voice wavered with sudden horror. I did this for us. Beck Yziel's face remained frighteningly calm as she tightened her grip on the shard. Why? The other self demanded, recoiling. Everything you achieved, Beck Yziel said in a quiet, steady voice. I could have done myself. There was no shaking in her tone now, only cold certainty. I am the daughter of the mythology guildmaster. That is the only reason you're afraid of losing me. Her eyes were dead calm as she stared into the broken mirror. If you possessed anyone else, you would be nothing. Deep down, you know you're worthless without this body. You're just terrified of being alone. That single sentence made the demon panic. This is bad. I've lost too much blood. My power is fading. The voice began to scream inside her mind. What are you saying? Stop this madness. If this keeps going, we will both die. The cry echoed through the empty void of her consciousness. Without another word, Beck Yziel drove the shard of glass into her own stomach. Blood splattered across the floor again, violent and bright, as her desperate act pushed both her and the demon toward the edge of death. You may be insane, but I am not. Even as that thought flashed through her mind, another image struck her without warning, the memory of her hand resting against Grandfell Claudy Arpius's face. It came back so vividly that it made her breath catch. He had looked straight at her, not past her, not through her, but directly at her with that cold, piercing gaze that missed nothing. Beck Yziel's eyes widened in stunned disbelief. In Grandfell Claudy Arpius's sharp, unshaken gaze, he had not seen a monster standing in front of him. What he had seen was the shadow of a woman, the real Beck Yziel hidden behind the demon. In that moment when she had tried to seduce Grandfell Claudy Arpius, the image of her true self had been standing behind the monster all along. Her eyes trembled violently. He saw the real me. He was looking at me, not at you. Then another memory rose from deep inside her. Grandfell Claudy Arpius turning his back and lifting a hand in quiet farewell to the real Beck Yziel. Farewell. The word echoed in her mind, and Beck Yziel suddenly snapped back to reality. At the same time, the demon clutched the wound at her neck, its thoughts racing in panic as blood continued to spill. If I don't move now, I'll die? No, I can't die here. I still have to take revenge on Lee Hoyle. The desperation in that thought was raw, frantic, and ugly. She staggered forward on unsteady legs, both hands soaked in crimson as she reached for the doorknob. Her fingers slipped against the metal from all the blood, but she forced them tight anyway. Why are human bodies this fragile? I can't regenerate. I don't have enough mana left. I need to consume something, anything at all. Gritting her teeth, Beck Yziel shoved the door open. The bodyguard outside turned, saw her drenched in blood, and immediately panicked. Young miss, your blood. Wait. No. We need to get you to a hospital right now, he cried out, his face turning pale as he rushed toward her in alarm. But before he could even finish speaking, a demonic shadow stretched across the wall and suddenly lunged at him like a living thing released from darkness. Meanwhile, back at the wooden cabin, a heavy silence had settled over everything. It did not feel peaceful. It felt dense, watchful, like the quiet just before something broke. Grandfell Claudy Arpius sat holding a cup of hot tea, steam curling softly into the air, when the system interface flashed before his eyes without warning. The sudden glow cut through the calm of the room. Natural predator skill activated. The message appeared in a sharp blink. Granfell Claudia Arpius's eyes narrowed at once, every trace of stillness replaced by alert focus. Damn it. Sneaking in at this hour without permission. You really are as rude as the rumors say. He set the teacup down with measured calm, never once losing that upright, noble posture of his, even as his irritation grew colder. Enter, Demon. Granfell Claudia Arpius's face remained icy, though the corners of his lips curled into a faint, dangerous smirk. You are not the guest I was expecting, but I will show you proper hospitality regardless. Behind him, Lee Hoyle's faint spirit swallowed hard and carefully avoided eye contact. He glanced nervously at the door, letting out a breath as though he had just escaped from prison for a moment. Thank God, he thought. So even demons inside a mana recap have a schedule and eventually go to sleep. The relief was brief, shaky, and far too hopeful. Moonlight spilled across the window in pale silver, and under that cold light, Beck Yiziel appeared. She stood with her arms crossed and leaned casually against the wall, but the evenness of her voice felt far more dangerous than shouting ever could. Your senses are sharper than I gave you credit for. The moment she spoke, all of Lee Hoyle's relief vanished. His heart nearly jumped out of his chest, and his eyes widened in silent terror. Inside, he screamed like a frightened cat trapped at the window of its own soul. Granfell Claudia Arpius's expression did not change in the slightest. He turned his head slowly, his aura darkening around him. Breaking into a gentleman's room through the window in the middle of the night. Is that your understanding of etiquette? Lee Hoyle silently thanked him for remaining composed enough to keep them alive. Beck Yiziel stepped down onto the floor and walked toward him with a loose, challenging swagger, her voice thick with sarcasm. Oh, etiquette. So now you're lecturing me about human morals? She said with a mocking smile. At the same time, the killing intent rolling off her became heavier, denser, until it started to press against the room like a storm cloud lowering over their heads. She touched her lips lightly, a wicked smile taking shape as madness glowed in her eyes. But wait, what was I supposed to do again? I seem to have completely forgotten. Lee Hoyle felt a chill run through him when he realized he could no longer see even the faintest shadow of the human Beck Yiziel inside her. Granfell Claudia Arpius narrowed his eyes. What happened? Is she asleep again? I can't see Beck Yiziel anywhere. The creature's eyes glowed a deep, blood red as her face twisted into a mocking expression. What do you mean? She whispered, almost playfully. I am right here. Lee Hoyle's eyes widened in anxious horror. That girl is dead. She suddenly picked up a weapon and stabbed herself. The words hit him like ice water. She probably died from the shock after that, the demon said with ugly casualness. Since then, I haven't felt even the slightest trace of her life force. There was not a shred of regret in her voice. The demon covered half her face with one hand, but even that could not hide the frenzy in her expression. Well, what else was I supposed to do, stupid bitch? She sneered, her voice curling with contempt. Did she really think she mattered that much? Cold sweat drenched Lee Hoyle's back. Beck Yiziel is dead? How did it happen that suddenly? As his thoughts spiraled, the demon leaned in closer, savoring his shock. Do you want to hear a joke? She asked. Standing beside Granfell Claudia Arpius, a full head shorter than him, she crossed her arms and spoke with dripping irony. Her death is completely your fault. Her red eyes burned as her smile twisted with contempt. She kept rambling on about how you were the only one who truly saw her. As she spoke, a long-haired shadow rose from behind and placed a dark hand on Granfell Claudia Arpius's head like a stain spreading over light. The demon leaned in and whispered into his ear, and for the first time his face shifted with surprise. She was the illegitimate daughter of the mythology guildmaster's mistress. When that scandal broke, the chairman was dragged to the edge of ruin by public opinion. The news cycle had been merciless. The public split into furious camps, fighting across social media without pause. Then a memory surfaced, a woman kneeling down, gently patting a little girl's head with trembling care. These were stories from when Beck Yiziel was only 8 years old. That innocent girl, the one with the bright smile, slowly withdrew into herself under the weight of malicious articles, cruel gossip, and the sharp, judgmental stares of the world around her. Even though she had done absolutely nothing wrong, her face was spread all over the internet, as if she were the one who had committed some unforgivable sin. She was harassed at school and called trash by the neighbors. And when her mother finally collapsed under depression, her father stood before the public with a prepared press conference script in his hand. Even if this child was an accident, I cannot leave her alone. I will take responsibility and raise her. The demon laughed manically in front of Granfell Claudie Arpius, her voice climbing into a near shriek. And then years later, when she awakened as a player, that bastard used her all over again. He forced her to clear rifts over and over, grinding levels without rest, treating her less like a daughter and more like a disposable tool in some endless leveling game. He did not care whether she lived or died, and she still obeyed him like a dog. Why? Because all she ever wanted was her father's approval. That hunger kept her chained more tightly than anything else. A photograph flashed through the memory, her father smiling with practiced warmth beside a brightly smiling Beck Yiziel. The image looked loving on the surface, but something false and rotten hid underneath it. He acknowledged her as his proud daughter. Let me introduce the one you all ignored and hated, my daughter, Beck Yiziel. The demon screamed the words in rage, as if even repeating them was enough to make her skin crawl. I will proudly take revenge on everyone who killed my mother. Her face twisted horribly as she leaned closer to Granfell Claudie Arpius, lowering her voice to a whisper that somehow felt even crueler than screaming. But in the end, that girl did absolutely nothing, the demon said. Then she continued with a sneer. I still can't believe she once said she would make them all pay. How boring. Doesn't that sound completely idiotic? And after all that, she died for nothing. The moment those words landed, Granfell Claudie Arpius's fury erupted like something breaking loose from chains. A lowly demon dares to speak to me in such a manner. Your arrogance knows no bounds. His voice thundered with cold authority. At the same time, a system alert flashed. Player Lee Hoyle has focused on you. Your mental stability is critically low. The warning appeared as the demon began to tremble visibly, sweat pouring down her face. What the hell is this pressure? How can a mere human carry this kind of presence? The system flashed again, as if answering her fear with something even worse. You are in a state of extreme terror. The message was simple, but its meaning crashed down like a sentence of death. Sensing the distortion, Granfell Claudie Arpius's shadow seemed to stretch and loom over her. His voice dropped low and rough, heavy with contempt. Step aside. I have no interest in conversing with rude filth. Lee Hoyle felt the full edge of Granfell Claudie Arpius's killing intent and sucked in a startled breath. Huh, what is this? The pressure in the room no longer felt human at all. Did some kind of exorcism just begin? Lee Hoyle thought in confusion. This is weird. There's no altar, no ritual circle, nothing. Then why does it feel like this? The next instant, the scene shifted, and he found himself standing inside a castle, staring at a noble-looking boy who resembled a young Granfell Claudie Arpius. The moment he saw that innocent smile on the boy's face, Lee Hoyle realized where he was. This was Granfell Claudie Arpius's subconscious world, a place buried somewhere deep beneath all that cold pride and terrifying power. Then, without warning, Lee Hoyle clutched his chest and screamed in agony. The pain struck so suddenly and so violently that it felt as though his heart had been seized from the inside by an invisible hand. What is happening to me? My heart felt like it was being crushed in a giant fist, squeezed harder with every passing second. The pain was so sudden and so violent that Lee Hoyle could barely think straight. Then Granfell Claudie Arpius's subconscious shifted once again. The entire scene warped without warning, as if the world itself were being peeled back to reveal a deeper layer buried underneath. The boy had become a tall man now, and the building around him had grown dark and oppressive. As he moved toward the great hall, an unspeakable sight unfolded before him. Piles of corpses stacked like discarded waste, and beneath them, a sea of blood spreading across the floor in dreadful silence. Lee Hoyle stood there in a daze, unable to move. For a moment, his mind went completely blank, as if the horror in front of him had stolen even his ability to react. Was all of that grand, noble posturing just an act? The question flashed through him, but before he could hold on to it, the memories came rushing back and began merging with Granfell Claudie Arpius's past. As their consciousnesses fused more deeply, Li Hoyle felt those ancient emotions as clearly and painfully as if they were his own. The hatred, the grief, the iron resolve, none of it felt distant anymore. A vow rang through the chambers of his mind like a sacred oath carved into stone. He would dedicate every remaining moment of his existence to the absolute extermination of every demon in creation. In the physical world, Granfell Claude Arpius looked as though he had crossed the edge of sanity. Beck Yiziel's eyes flew wide with shock, and then her pupils shrank in raw terror. The change in him was so overwhelming that even she, who had already seen monsters, could not hide her fear. How dare a filthy demon insult the grandeur of humanity? Massive power surged into Granfell Claude Arpius's hand, bright and violent, the kind of force that made the air itself tremble around him. And yet, even in the middle of all that fury, he had not abandoned his pride. No matter how underhanded Beck Yiziel had been, he refused to let the noble sacrifice tied to her dignity be mocked so cheaply. Hundreds of swords forged from pure light appeared in the air one after another, all of them under Granfell Claude Arpius's perfect control. Their glowing tips turned at once toward Beck Yiziel, pinning her in place with silent judgment. She trembled uncontrollably from head to toe. Faced with a being of that magnitude, she could no longer even pretend she had a chance to challenge him. Then Granfell Claude Arpius delivered his verdict. For the sin of ignorance. The moment those words fell, Beck Yiziel dropped to her knees in terror, crushed beneath the weight of his presence alone. I will atone for my disrespect with my life. The words left her mouth like a confession torn out under pressure. And with that, the judgment came to an end. The rage vanished as suddenly as it had erupted. The altar-like space faded away, and Granfell Claude Arpius returned to that cold, aristocratic calm of his, as though none of the madness from moments before had ever happened. He stepped forward and gently lifted Beck Yiziel back up. The motion was unexpectedly careful, almost considerate, which only made the contrast with his earlier fury feel even sharper. Do you hear me? Your pride. I saw it clearly. You did well. His voice was quieter now, stripped of its killing edge, and those words seemed to strike her more deeply than the threat of death had. Beck Yiziel slowly looked up, her eyes brimming with tears she could no longer hold back. Watching her, Li Hoyle thought, oh man, she looks like she's been through absolute hell. She really needed to go home and rest. Granfell Claude Arpius held out his hand and said, it is late. Go home and cry there. Meanwhile, Li Hoyle thought, well, harsh, but I guess as long as she gets the message. Before anyone could say another word, Beck Yiziel's body gave out, and she fainted on the spot. Granfell Claude Arpius caught her with a faint look of helplessness and muttered under his breath, ah, right. Then he remembered that she had said earlier that she stabbed herself. No visible wound, but fainting was to be expected. He said it like a calm diagnosis, though the whole situation had long since moved far beyond anything normal. I suppose I will let her sleep here. But just as that decision left his mouth, a voice suddenly shouted, Li Hoyle. Jessica burst through the door in full armor with a squad of soldiers behind her, her expression grave and ready for battle. We were patrolling Yusra when we detected a demonic presence, Jessica said quickly, still catching her breath. We came to make sure you were safe, Li Hoyle. Then Jessica froze. Her face instantly turned a deep, burning red when she saw Granfell Claude Arpius carefully tucking a blanket around Beck Yiziel. Jessica, she stammered, then corrected herself in a flustered rush. Apologies. We had no idea your girlfriend was here. Granfell Claude Arpius answered at once. You are mistaken. Inside, Li Hoyle was speechless. I just put a blanket over her, that's all. But Jessica kept going. Though, honestly, it would be stranger if a handsome man like Li Hoyle weren't seeing someone. Li Hoyle could only think, why am I being attacked with compliments right now? Behind her, Enoch Lauren's face had gone bright red, while Jessica herself was now sweating from embarrassment. Anyway, sorry for disturbing you, my lord. We're leaving now. Enoch. The moment she said that, Enoch Lauren bolted away with tears and snot streaming down his face, yelling as he ran like his whole world had just collapsed. Li Hoyle, you big dummy, he screamed. Jessica and Li Hoyle both stood there frozen, jaws dropped, and faces gone pale from sheer confusion. Wait, Enoch Loren, what was that supposed to mean? Let's just leave together. Jessica called after him, but he was already gone. Meanwhile, Granfell Claudie Arpius sank heavily onto the couch, looking completely drained by the absurdity of it all. Lee Hoyle could feel the full weight of the day pressing down on him. Honestly, hunting the 7 deadly sins would have been less exhausting than dealing with this kind of drama. Then, right in the middle of that exhausted silence, a class quest notification chimed. The sharp little sound felt almost offensive after everything else that had happened. He frowned at once. Huh? A quest all of a sudden. The timing alone was enough to make him suspicious. Why do I have such a bad feeling about this? While that unease crawled up his spine, the scene shifted to the AO Korea branch, where the staff were already buzzing excitedly over a fresh announcement. Hello everyone. Akina is expanding. A new region is on the way. The announcement spread through the office instantly, and the mood turned electric almost at once. The new zone, the northern city of Frost, has been added. The employees broke into cheers. Wow, this is huge. Frost is one of the biggest cities in Akina lore. There are definitely going to be new shops and smithies there. He checked the comments and immediately saw the excitement overflowing. Yep, I knew it. This is exactly the kind of update the game needed to stay fresh. On the Y-Gang Gang channel, the host was flushed with pure hype, barely containing his excitement. Have you all heard about the Frost update? Finally, we're getting a major city expansion. This is going to open up a ton of new content. The comments section exploded right away, full of mixed opinions, theories, and wild speculation. The reporter smiled so brightly it was obvious he was thrilled. Emergency Akina broadcast, breaking news. Frost, the northern city, is finally receiving an update. The live chat immediately went wild beneath the stream. This is the beginning of humanity's counterattack. It feels like we're living inside a leveling Manhwa now. Updated already. Hurry up, we can't wait. But while everyone else celebrated, Lee Hoyle read the actual quest notice in silence. This quest was about hunting a brutal demon king. The claws of the demon king's evil had already begun to emerge. The last demon hunter must act to stop the demon king's forces. Lee Hoyle's thoughts halted. Wait, there's a demon king in Frost? Lee Hoyle's soul practically turned pale. He stared in stunned disbelief. Damn it, a demon king right in the middle of a city? That's impossible. A Lord-class monster would already be a disaster, but a demon king? That was a catastrophe on an entirely different level. He hurriedly tapped at his phone. I have to warn people. I need to post this on the Akina homepage or somewhere, anywhere. Granfell Claudie Arpius, do it now. But Granfell Claudie Arpius only sat calmly on the couch and lifted his teacup for another sip. A demon king, he murmured. That reminds me of the evil god. Then memories rose to the surface. An old hooded figure explaining that demon kings were the mortal enemies of demon hunters. Back when Akina had still been just a game, during the demon hunter training tutorial, the instructor had spoken with open venom in his voice. Demon kings are strong. Then, after a short pause, he corrected himself with visible regret. No, not merely strong. They are overwhelming. He went on to explain that there were countless demon kings, all divided by rank and hierarchy. Granfell Claudie Arpius had sat on the stone steps and listened closely. Very few demon hunters have survived even a single encounter with the lowest ranked among them. Then, without warning, the instructor handed him a worn notebook stuffed with colorful markers and scribbled notes. Granfell Claudie Arpius looked at it in surprise, but the instructor continued in a raised, urgent voice. You had better prepare yourself. These are the names of the demon kings we know, along with every record we've gathered on them. Burn this into your memory, Granfell Claudie Arpius. At that moment, a system notification popped up. Acquiring knowledge about demon kings allows you to kill them. The message was short, but its importance was absolute. I will return in 2 hours to test you. Lee Hoyle groaned at the memory. It's been way too long. I don't remember the details anymore. I had to spend 10 whole hours memorizing that garbage because I kept failing the test. But Granfell Claudie Arpius let out a soft breath, almost admiring the memory. That was meaningful time. It helped me acquire precious knowledge. Experience from the past is never wasted. Lee Hoyle mentally cursed while admitting the obvious. Fine. At least it's useful now. Fate really did have a twisted sense of humor. Just then, his phone gave another sharp ding. A new comment notification had appeared, and when he opened it, he found a community post waiting for him. Please prepare thoroughly before entering Frost. A Demon King level threat may be waiting for us there. Be cautious around the NPCs as well. Underneath, someone had already commented, a Demon King? What is this fake news? Just some idiot trying to stir up drama? Lee Hoyle sighed heavily. You really can't find anything reliable on the internet. Frustrated, he tossed the phone aside. Whatever. He jumped onto the bed and tried to act relaxed, stretching out like he had already decided not to care. Frost is a major city, after all. Surely nothing that terrible could happen there. Even if a Demon King wanted chaos, it couldn't just wipe everything out so easily, right? If anything, he was weirdly looking forward to the update. The restaurants in Frost were supposed to be incredible. Maybe I should even send in a request. Beside him, Granfell Claudia Arpius remained deep in thought as he quietly enjoyed his tea. Lee Hoyle crossed one leg over the other and tucked both hands behind his head. Ah, right. I should check on the items I ordered from the Mage Tower first. Then he remembered the price and grimaced. Custom orders from the Mage Tower cost a ridiculous amount, but whatever, it should be fine. It's late. I should just sleep. And yet, even as he lay there trying to settle down, an uneasy restlessness crept into his chest. This isn't good. I'm annoyed. That stupid post keeps circling in my head and making it impossible to sleep. Lee Hoyle kept tossing and turning, irritated and wide awake. Why do people have to be this toxic all the time? Just then, a bird came fluttering toward Granfell Claudia Arpius. He blinked in surprise. Huh, it's a cute little bird, but why does its face look so unbelievably grumpy? The bird landed and grumbled in an exhausted voice. Delivery from the Mage Tower. You're Lee Hoyle, right? Yeah, he answered, still staring at it in disbelief. Granfell Claudia Arpius took the package while the bird chirped out one last complaint like a curse. These days everyone buys things online. It's making my life miserable. Goodbye. As it flew off, Granfell Claudia Arpius thought coldly. Even delivery staff have grown lazy these days. Then he tore open the package without hesitation. Let's see whether these items truly live up to my standards. There was no need to visit the Magic Tower in person just yet. This was enough to judge their workmanship. Resting inside an exquisitely designed box was a ring of pure emerald, polished so beautifully that it almost seemed to glow on its own. System alert. Pure emerald ring detected. The message flashed up clearly, making the item feel even more extraordinary. A unique artifact created through a secret method that maximizes the emerald's natural properties. Impressive. But wait, there weren't even any overly complicated conditions attached to it. Health regeneration activates upon taking damage. The effect was clean, direct, and frighteningly useful. Just as expected, the Magic Tower had produced a truly magnificent treasure. But inside, Lee Hoyle was already sweating bullets. He nervously chewed at his fingernails, his whole body tensing with financial dread. This has to cost an insane amount, right? In any normal leveling fantasy economy, a healing item with stats like that would easily be worth 1 billion gold or more. So how much would the commission fee for a custom order even be? I need to check my bank balance right now. But Granfell Claudia Arpius Romeo remained perfectly calm, already shifting his attention to the final item, a dragon scale handkerchief. A masterpiece-grade artifact imbued with transcendent effects that surpassed the natural limits of its original materials. It had been crafted from resources so rare they were practically beyond price. The blinding golden light of that item rank nearly gave Lee Hoyle a heart attack on the spot. He froze completely. I think I just saw the word masterpiece. My eyes have to be messing with me, right? There was no way something like that was casually sitting in front of him. A masterpiece in this world was not just a good item. That word meant perfection, the kind of object people spent their whole lives chasing and still never touched. It was the highest class of item possible, something whose value could not even be properly calculated. Even legendary blacksmiths would spend their entire lives dreaming of producing just one such creation. The price could be in the billions, maybe even the hundreds of billions. But Granfell Claudia Arpius Romeo's voice echoed in his mind with chilling certainty. Money is trivial. I desire only the absolute best. Lee Hoyle's eyes bulged, and his hands shook as he imagined the invoice. I'm done for. What happens if I can't pay? Will they confiscate everything? Right then, the system chimed. Stat unlocked. Aesthetics. Current level, low. Granfell Claudie Arpius Romeo smiled with cold satisfaction. The masterpiece dragon scale handkerchief is now in your possession. Aesthetics. I rather like the sound of that. Meanwhile, inside his head, Lee Hoyle was screaming loud enough to burst a vein. Granfell Claudie Arpius Romeo loves it, but I'm the one who's going to have to pay for it. Desperate, Lee Hoyle immediately pulled up his status window, looking for anything that might save him from financial ruin. He scrolled frantically through the points he had been hoarding ever since purifying the lust demon that had possessed Beck Yiziel. He had guarded those points carefully, saving them for a true emergency. I was saving these for a real emergency, but this absolutely counts as one. With a grim expression, he dumped every single point into his luck stat. After that, there was only one thing left for him to do: pray like his life depended on it. Lee Hoyle dropped to his knees in total desperation. "Oh God of fortune, please." It was the kind of prayer that came from pure panic rather than faith. Granfell Claudie Arpius Romeo raised an eyebrow. "Oh, a suitcase." It seemed Marcello had sent over a suit as a gift. "It matches the handkerchief perfectly. How fortunate." Lee Hoyle screamed internally. "That's not the kind of luck I wanted." Then another system notification rang out, and the color visibly drained from Granfell Claudie Arpius Romeo's face. There was still a quest pending. Far away in Japan, at the Inazuma Guild headquarters, Inazuma himself was already standing in the middle of a brewing storm of fury. A thick stack of documents slammed into him so hard that several sheets sliced across his cheek like paper knives, leaving behind a thin red line that felt more humiliating than painful. A shrill voice screamed through the room. "We lost to the Sin Guild in the rankings. Is there any humiliation greater than this?" The accusation rang out like a public whipping. Inazuma grit his teeth and swore silently to himself. "I, Inazuma, will restore our honor the moment we reach Frost." The vow burned with pride and anger in equal measure. His superior pointed at him with a trembling finger. "If you fail again, you will slice your own belly open and die. Do you understand?" "Yes," he answered stiffly. Then a subordinate spoke up nervously. "Guild Master Inazuma, a gate to Frost has appeared near the Hokkaido Sea." The subordinate bowed repeatedly and apologized so much that his voice nearly cracked. The atmosphere in the room had become so tense that even speaking required courage. "It is still classified information, strictly limited to the Inazuma Guild," he continued in a hurried voice. "The Japanese government will almost certainly try to stop us from moving first. We need to expand our influence and conquer Frost before anyone else can." The subordinate panicked and blurted out, "Are we actually going to physically block other players from entering? We don't even know yet whether Frost is safe." That was exactly the wrong thing to say. Inazuma punched straight through the wall, terrifying everyone in the room. His glasses slipped off, and veins bulged across his forehead. The sheer force of his rage made the entire room go still. Frost is a city built for berserkers, and Neen of the Sin Guild is a first-rate berserker. Inazuma calmly picked up his glasses again. "We already lost to Sin in Oscura territory and in Usura. That will not happen again. There will be no next time. We will crush them at Frost." The subordinate trembled and bowed. "Understood. Shall I summon all guild members to Hokkaido?" His voice was careful, thin, and full of fear. "And one more thing." Inazuma pointed to the bleeding cut on his own face, his voice dropping into a deadly quiet that was somehow worse than shouting. "Mr. Analyst, if you don't commit seppuku for me, then watch your back." Everyone else in the room immediately pretended nothing was wrong, relieved beyond words that they themselves were not the ones being targeted. The analyst turned pale, but he still forced himself to nod. "I will keep that in mind." Beneath the desk, however, he secretly sent out a text message with trembling fingers. The message read, "The coordinates have appeared near Hokkaido." A reply came back almost instantly. "Thank you. Payment will be sent after verification. When will you return to assist me?" At the seaport, a man came running in and shouted, "We have a report from the Inazuma side." "Spread the news immediately and move," someone shouted back. "Where is it?" The man opened his laptop and answered at once, "Hokkaido. Move fast." The urgency in his voice left no room for delay. I bet he sold that information to everyone else too. The news exploded across social media in an instant. Frostgate located in Hokkaido. Monsters appearing near the Hokkaido seas. The entire internet lit up like dry grass hitting flame. Let's go. On the way to the airport, Dimitri received the intel and immediately spoke to Lox. We just got the call from the analyst. I see it, Lox replied. Hurry. We leave now. Around them, the Sin Guild gathered in noisy chaos. You'll freeze to death in a swimsuit, you idiot. Are you stupid? We're bringing ski gear. You're insane. Emotions were running high in every direction. Then someone shouted, Look, everyone in the world is gathering at Hokkaido. The excitement and panic were spreading together. The comments today are kind of cute. What about that poster? Lee Hoyle, nose hair today. The streams and chats were already drowning in nonsense, jokes, and random mockery, just like always. Frost, the northern city of berserkers, had once been one of the great major bases on the continent of Arcana. Back when all of this had only been a game, it housed blacksmith NPCs, countless facilities, and the full infrastructure of a proper metropolis. It was no coincidence that people called Frost the starting point of humanity's comeback. If the city still existed in reality the way it had in the game, then it would be a gold mine of opportunity for every player alive. At Hokkaido, a massive tide of people surged through the snow, all of them heading straight toward the Frost Gate. The white landscape had turned into a living river of ambition. Nam Taemin marched forward carrying a massive blade, his expression dark with murderous intent. He looked like he was ready to split through any obstacle in his path. Huh? What the hell is this? His voice rang out sharp and confused the moment he saw what was ahead. Have you all lost your minds? Armed soldiers were blocking the road completely. Nam Taemin shouted in disbelief, unable to understand what kind of absurd situation this was supposed to be. Bro, they're asking for passports. The words sounded insane even as they were spoken. Since when do players need passports to enter a dungeon? Nam Kielman stepped forward and waved a hand, trying to smooth things over. There must be some mistake. Hello, I am Nam Kielman. But the soldier cut him off with a cold expression. Apologies, but entry requires a passport. Nam Taemin stared in disbelief. Huh. The soldiers tightened into a human wall, and his temper instantly flared. They're really not letting anyone through. His anger rose fast as he realized this was not a misunderstanding at all, but a complete lockdown. They were sealing off the entire area before the snow-covered forest. And it was not just Nam Taemin's group. Everyone there, no matter who they were, was being denied entry. But high above all that confusion, another group came skiing down the slopes from above. While everyone else was stuck below the blockade, they were descending from the mountain like they had found their own way in. Inazuma surged to the front and pushed the group onward, shouting for them to move even faster. There was no time to hesitate now. They had to get there at least 10 minutes early, no matter what it took, and his voice carried the sharp urgency of someone forcing himself forward through pure will. I can see the Frost Gate up ahead. Inazuma was soaked through with sweat, yet a fierce grin still spread across his face, drunk on the feeling that victory was finally within reach. But the instant they came skidding to a stop, that excitement vanished, and the color drained from every face at once. Sharp mechanical spikes had already burst up from the ground like a hidden execution trap. The sight hit Inazuma in an instant, and his pupils shrank with raw horror as the reality of what stood before them finally sank in. This is Frost. The words barely left his mouth, thin and shaken, as if even saying the name made the freezing terror around them feel more real. He spun toward his teammates and screamed at the top of his lungs, "Dodge it!" But the warning came a heartbeat too late. Cold steel punched through flesh without mercy, and the sound of impact was far too brutal to mistake. Blood sprayed hot and bright across the white snow, staining it in an instant. There was no chance left to survive, no miracle waiting at the last second. Then, from within the mist, a massive dark shadow took shape, crowned with horns and lined with vicious fangs, as if something from a nightmare had stepped into the world. Panic exploded through the area. "A demon! Run!" someone cried, but the fear had already gone too far. The shadow lunged and swallowed Inazuma whole, and he froze where he stood, his body locked solid, unable to even force out another word. The crowd below erupted into terrified screams. Run! Save us! It's a demon. The cries piled over one another in chaos as those glowing red eyes rushed forward through the haze. Damn it, someone cursed, but the desperation in the voice made it clear that nobody believed things were under control anymore. At this point, committing seppuku wasn't even his biggest concern anymore. Back at the guild headquarters, that grim thought was shattered when a sudden voice cut through the silence in disbelief. What did you just say? The shock in the room was immediate and unmistakable. Nam Taemin tugged at his tie and raised an eyebrow, clearly struggling to process what he had just heard. Even for him, the report sounded too absurd, too sudden, and far too dangerous to accept at face value. An archmage from the Magic Tower has gone missing. Nam Keelman delivered the news with grim certainty, leaving no room to doubt his tone. That's right. This report comes directly from a guild member who attended the conference, he added, making it clear this was not some rumor born from panic. A heavy silence settled over the room as the information began to sink in. But the mages of the Magic Tower are bound by oath. They're not supposed to leave, someone said carefully. Correct. Then came the next question, darker than the first. Could this anomaly be backlash from the recent player's summoning ritual? Nam Keelman frowned, confusion spreading across his face. Summoning? The man gave a grim nod. Yes. A dimensional fracture has just opened at the association's branch in Wan. But something about this feels wrong. The confusion on Nam Keelman's face slowly twisted into dread. A new rift appearing now, under these conditions, did not feel like an accident. It felt like the beginning of something much worse. But today isn't a scheduled update day, the man replied immediately, his voice sharp as a blade. Exactly. That single answer made the situation even more disturbing. Which means this is unprecedented. Nam Keelman felt his stomach twist with anxiety, and the air in the room suddenly seemed thick with the pressure of approaching disaster. Meanwhile, back at the construction site, the workers began retreating on instinct alone, shouting warnings as fear spread through the line. Danger, someone yelled. Then Grandfell Claudie Arpius Romeo's voice sliced through the gloom, urgent and controlled. Watch your heads. The cave mouth is right ahead. But the moment the two officials emerged from the passage, they both froze where they stood. Their eyes widened in naked terror at the sight waiting for them outside, as if the world before them had suddenly stopped making sense. What in the world? The words came out in a stunned whisper, small and helpless against the impossible scene in front of them. A massive, jagged tear in reality hung before them, pulsing with ominous crimson energy like a wound carved straight into the sky. Is that really a rift? The junior official stammered, fumbling with his device as he checked the readings again and again. Unknown shape, unknown coordinates. The machine itself seemed unable to understand what it was seeing. This isn't in the system logs, his superior barked, then immediately issued a desperate order. Hurry up. Measure the threat level and the collapse rate. Now. But panic had already taken hold. The junior official stared at the data and cried out, "What is this? Why is it reacting like this?" His voice shook with pure alarm. "Is the machine broken?" the junior blurted out, almost pleading for that to be the answer. The superior snatched the signal detector from his trembling hands. "Give it here." He stared at the screen for a second, then shouted, "What about the request for the great guild leaders?" His tone made it clear that ordinary procedure had already stopped matching. The junior answered with a shaking voice, "Griffin and Zion have already mobilized." At that, the superior's face lost every trace of color. "Evacuate the civilians immediately," he ordered, "and send a code-red emergency request to Player Association headquarters." There was no hesitation left in him now, only fear and urgency. His pupils shrank to pinpoints as he stared at the screen, overwhelmed by what the detector was showing him. It was the kind of expression a person made only when they had seen something they truly wished they hadn't. The detector flashed a deadly warning across its display, power immeasurable. Even the machine, built to categorize threats, could do nothing but spit out a result that sounded like a death sentence. This rift, it's at least level 1000. This is a catastrophe-class event. And far away, in the ethereal cloud garden of the Magic Tower, Grandfell Claudie Arpius Romeo surveyed his surroundings with a cool, critical gaze, as if already trying to make sense of a crisis no one else could fully grasp. "Where are we?" I thought we were searching for the missing mage. Marcelo gestured calmly as he answered, though his expression remained serious. Despite his immense mana, Vangrith Tom suffers from low self-esteem and a passive nature. The explanation sounded measured, but it hinted that the missing archmage was far more complicated than his power alone suggested. Suddenly, a pulse of emerald energy burst outward, catching Grandfell Claudie Arpius Romeo slightly off guard. Marcelo continued, almost as if reminding himself as much as anyone else. A man like that would never break the tower's laws on a whim. That conviction only made the situation surrounding Vangrith Tom feel stranger. Lee Hoyle watched the display of magic in open awe. So, you're trying to trace his mana signature? His voice carried both admiration and disbelief, as though he was watching something far beyond what normal mages should be able to do. Outside, the green wave of magic erupted fully and spread across the entire city. It passed through pedestrians without harming them, flowed through buildings like light through glass, and kept expanding farther and farther until it seemed to wrap around the entire planet in one vast spiritual sweep. Marcelo slowly closed his eyes, and his consciousness sank into the tide of mana. It was as if his mind had dissolved into the current itself, reaching outward through every hidden vein of magic running across the world. I have located every dimensional rift currently existing on Earth. However, I still cannot determine which one Archmage Vangrith Tom is trapped inside. Lee Hoyle's jaw dropped at once, his disbelief so complete that he could barely form a response. You scanned the entire planet in a heartbeat? I already knew you were a monster, but this goes beyond logic. Lee Hoyle could only stare. Beside him, Grandfell Claudie Arpius Romeo furrowed his brow and sank into thought, his expression showing that even he was taking the situation more seriously now. We've already located Vangrith Tom. The moment those words were spoken, Marcelo spun around, his calm composure finally cracking. How? How could you possibly have found him? For the first time, he sounded genuinely shaken. He fell silent right after, waiting for some revelation involving ancient magic or an impossible technique. Did you detect magical residue inside the rift? He asked, clearly expecting an answer that matched the scale of what he had just witnessed. Lee Hoyle and Marcelo both leaned in, pressing for answers with matching urgency. Their expressions were tense, impatient, and full of questions neither of them could hold back any longer. What forbidden tracking technique did you use? Marcelo demanded. Grandfell Claudie Arpius Romeo looked at him with dead-fish eyes, completely unimpressed by the dramatic assumption. No, I just got a text message from Nam Kielman. With that, he adjusted his tie and turned to leave, looking absurdly calm for someone carrying news that important. Anyway, the location's confirmed. I'm heading out. I'll contact you once I've secured Vangrith Tom's safety. Marcelo immediately panicked and reached out as if to stop him, unwilling to let him walk away so casually into what could easily be a catastrophe. Wait, are you really sure you can handle this alone? Marcelo asked, alarm rising in his voice. In his mind flashed the image of Lee Hoyle and every warning tied to the danger ahead, making the question feel less like doubt and more like fear. No. Grandfell Claudie Arpius Romeo's reply came out steeped in arrogance, pride, and duty all at once. The disappearance of Senior Vangrith Tom is an internal matter of the Magic Tower. Relying on outsiders would stain our honor. Marcelo was left speechless by that answer, struck dumb by how absolute his conviction sounded. Marcelo lowered his head, his voice trembling with emotion. I've incurred a debt to you that I can never repay. In his heart, he seemed deeply moved, as if he believed Lee Hoyle truly cared that much about preserving the Magic Tower's dignity and reputation. Grandfell Claudie Arpius Romeo just looked confused by the elder's dramatic gratitude. Debt? What is he even talking about? Still, his thoughts drifted in a much simpler direction. Well, I don't really get it, but if this helps with the quest rewards, I'll take it. He waved the matter aside and said, Don't mention it. Marcelo rubbed his forehead, then made up his mind. I'm coming with you. Nearby, Lee Hoyle stood with his mouth hanging open in a perfect, stunned freeze. What? Back at the chaotic rift site, a female officer rubbed her chin as she carefully analyzed the situation. Even in the middle of panic, she was trying to force the scattered facts into something that made sense. a rift exceeding level 1000, and it appeared off schedule. She spoke slowly, as if each part of the conclusion only made the next one more disturbing. It looks like someone deliberately ripped the fabric of reality apart and threw the whole system into chaos. Her eyes shifted to the reports about the missing mage. If the being who tore this open is that mage, then this nightmare scenario actually fits. The logic was horrifying, but it was still logic. The whole scene felt less like a normal emergency and more like the final disaster arc of some twisted leveling story gone terribly wrong. Everything about it was too dramatic, too unstable, and far too catastrophic to be treated as routine. She continued her deduction in a low, tense voice. There's a rumor that a senior mage once failed a mana experiment, and an entire island in Anna simply vanished. One of the officials gasped, "Oh, that old legend. I heard it wiped out a whole continent." She didn't bother correcting which version was true. Either way, it means disaster. Nam Kielman stared at the incoming data, sweat gathering on his forehead. "This is bad," he muttered. "We can't see inside. The probe is being blocked. Something is interfering with the signal." The official rubbed his temples as the truth finally hit him in full. Every remote option they had was failing, and whatever waited inside was actively cutting them off. "It seems our only option is to physically enter the lion's den." A loud voice boomed from the back immediately after. "What?" Nam Kielman snapped around in disbelief. "Are you insane? The recommended level is 1000. His outrage came from fear, not pride. He knew exactly what that number meant. "This isn't something we can casually raid. Even if we gathered the top 100 guilds, our survival rate would still be in the single digits." But the confident voice fired back without the slightest hesitation, completely unbothered by the odds. "So what then? We just stand here and rot. If this mutated rift collapses while we keep arguing, everyone dies anyway." The construction workers nearby went still. "Huh." Nam Kielman quickly tried to calm things down. "No. I mean, we need a strategy, or at least we wait until Mr. Lee Hoyle arrives." But before the argument could continue, two figures emerged from the gloom. It was him. Grandfell Claudi Arpius Romeo frowned, and the sheer pressure of his presence alone seemed to demand obedience from everyone around him. Everyone instinctively stepped back. The two men walked forward in silence, and the crowd parted before them like the Red Sea, making way without needing to be told. The tension in the air only deepened as every eye turned toward them at once. "The Magic Tower will assume jurisdiction over this rift." The declaration landed with absolute authority, cold and clean, leaving no room for argument from anyone standing there. The worker's jaw practically hit the floor. For a second, he could only stare blankly, too stunned to even process what he had just heard. The official narrowed his eyes and muttered, "Mr. Lee Hoyle," but the female officer's attention had already shifted to the second figure beside him. "Wait, is that Marcelo?" she asked, her voice tight with disbelief. The crowd could hardly believe what they were seeing, and whispers broke out everywhere like sparks racing through dry grass. The senior archmage of the tower entered a rift, and he's with Lee Hoyle? The man who never leaves the tower, no matter how bad things get, is actually here? As the noise swelled, Grandfell Claudi Arpius Romeo finally spoke up, his voice cutting through the chaos with calm dominance. "Nam Kielman. It's Lee Hoyle. He has already analyzed the anomaly. Space-time fracture. Recommended level, 1000. The words came down like a sentence, stark and heavy, making the danger feel more real than ever. Collapse is imminent. Inside the rift, a figure staggered, then dropped hard to the ground, biting down on his own finger until blood ran just to keep himself conscious. "We have to find him," came the urgent conclusion, with no time left for hesitation. Grandfell Claudi Arpius Romeo and Marcelo stepped into the swirling vortex without slowing down. As soon as they crossed the threshold, Marcelo lifted his gaze and carefully surveyed the twisted interior around them. "What a desolate landscape. Are all rifts this chaotic?" Marcelo murmured, taking in the shattered terrain with unease. Grandfell Claudi Arpius Romeo slowly looked around, every instinct sharpening at once. "Spatial distortion," he said under his breath. "I've never seen a rift this twisted before." Then he glanced up at the strange light hanging overhead. "The laws of physics in here are being rewritten. This anomaly defied every rule they knew. Unlike the violent disorder of earlier fissures, this empty void held no beasts, no monsters, not even the usual traces of life. Granfell Claudi Arpius Romeo narrowed his eyes and whispered, "I see a light calling from the abyss." The moment Marcelo heard that, he lurched forward in panic. That mana's signature, it belongs to Senior Vangrith. And when they rushed ahead, the sight waiting for them was so chilling that even the air around them seemed to freeze. The mage was on his knees, completely consumed by the energy swirling around him. At the sound of his name, Vangrith Tom slowly reacted, as though dragged back from somewhere very far away. He raised his head, and his eyes widened in naked disbelief when he saw two high-ranking figures standing before him. "Archmage Marcelo and Vice Archmage Li Hoyle," he said shakily, unable to understand why they were here. Marcelo gently raised a hand, trying to calm him. "Compose yourself, Vangrith. We're not here to pass judgment." Still trembling, Vangrith replied, "I am fine, Archmage. Just tell us the truth." Even as the words came out, a wave of relief quietly washed through Vangrith. At the very least, neither of them seemed to be carrying any obvious killing intent. Granfell Claudi Arpius Romeo's sharp gaze slid past the trembling mage and locked onto the formation drawn behind him, examining every line and curve with cold precision. Then the realization hit him like ice through the spine. That was no ordinary magic circle. His voice dropped into a dangerous whisper. "Vangrith Tom, what kind of monstrosity are you hiding?" What stood behind the mage was unmistakable now. It was a demon summoning array. Granfell Claudi Arpius Romeo lunged forward at once, moving so suddenly that even Marcelo was caught off guard. Driven by panic and terror, Vangrith reacted on instinct and unleashed a defensive spell to stop him. "Forgive me, Lord Li Hoyle, but I can't let this opportunity slip through my fingers." His voice shook, but there was desperate conviction buried inside it. A torrent of raw, uncontrolled power burst from his hands in a violent surge. "Lord Li Hoyle!" Marcelo cried out in horror, immediately calling to ask whether he had been hurt by the blast. Granfell Claudi Arpius Romeo kept a stoic face, but his thoughts were screaming. "No, if not for the Archmage's defensive barrier, that strike would have erased me completely." Even he could tell just how close that attack had come to becoming fatal. He stared at the force of it with grim amazement. So this is the true potential of Senior Vangrith, the man who mastered pure magic theory. The realization settled hard, and his expression turned even more serious. "I'm sorry, but both of you need to leave this place immediately." Granfell Claudi Arpius Romeo analyzed the situation in silence. Contrary to the man's weak and nervous appearance, his pure magic carried enough destructive force to reshape the land itself. Then Vangrith confessed in a trembling voice, "The Elder Mage promised me that the ultimate truth I seek lies inside this rift." The moment he heard that, Granfell Claudi Arpius Romeo's pupils tightened in shock. "The Elder Mage." Vangrith's voice trembled with anger and humiliation as he continued. "If I can grasp that truth, then no one will ever dare look down on me again." Granfell Claudi Arpius Romeo immediately understood how bad this was. Was this the result of magical brainwashing? Dropping his stance lower, he roared, "Vangrith, get back." But the warning came too late to stop what was already happening. A colossal, malevolent eye opened from the void behind him, huge and unblinking, radiating a pressure so vile it made the surrounding space shudder. A demon was manifesting. There was no doubt left now, and the truth of it struck with sickening clarity. The passive skill Predator activated instantly, responding before conscious thought could even catch up with the danger in front of him. Granfell Claudi Arpius Romeo gritted his teeth hard enough to ache, staring at the scene with rising frustration and urgency. The fool didn't even sense the anomaly. Granfell Claudi Arpius Romeo thought bitterly. Vangrith had been completely swallowed by the brainwashing. That is a demon. Marcelo gasped at the realization. Granfell Claudi Arpius Romeo charged in to interrupt the summoning, but Vangrith struck back immediately, firing a massive beam of energy straight at them. "Lord Li Hoyle!" Marcelo screamed. Granfell Claudi Arpius Romeo strained against the assault, muscles tensing as he forced himself to endure the crushing wave of power. This was pure magic, a form of power originally meant to eradicate evil. Yet now it was being twisted into a shield to protect that very evil instead. The contradiction itself was almost maddening. He pulled his hand back for a split second, his mind racing through possibilities. How could he neutralize this without killing Vangrith in the process? In the distance, Vangrith faltered and began trembling in place, his attack slowly starting to unravel. Then Granfell Claude Arpius Romeo realized, I have the answer. Using bubble magic, Granfell Claude Arpius Romeo scattered the condensed mana harmlessly into the air. Marcello watched the whole thing happen with a stunned expression, as if his entire understanding of magic had just shattered. That's elementary light magic, he said, almost unable to believe his own eyes. In less than a heartbeat, Granfell Claude Arpius Romeo had broken down Vangrith's complex spell and repurposed it entirely. Then he tried to reason with him. Vangrith, stop this madness. If that entity fully crosses over, you'll lose all control. But instead of calming him, the warning only deepened the darkness on the mage's face. You call this anger? He replied. Vangrith hissed through clenched teeth. I'm standing here because of prodigies like you. The bitterness in his voice was old, raw, and painfully deep. Born into a prestigious family, acting like the hero of some mana recap. He spat, each word soaked in resentment that had clearly been festering for years. Chief Marcello, blessed with talent and mana like it was a gift from the gods, this rift is widening because of my hatred. And you, just some adventurer, can undo my life's work so easily. Damn you, Li Hoyle. The others could only watch in horror as Vangrith spiraled deeper into madness. If I'd been born with your gifts, I never would have fallen this far. From the abyss behind him, the demon's massive hands reached out and clawed the rift wider. Granfell Claude Arpius Romeo's expression darkened at once. Vangrith's deep-rooted inferiority was no longer just emotional weakness. It was actively feeding and amplifying the portal. Vangrith's unstable emotions were tearing at the fabric of space itself. The density of the energy gathering there had already surpassed that of a demon king, turning the whole scene into something ripped straight out of a nightmare. The conclusion was becoming impossible to avoid. This was most likely a great demon, one of the 7 deadly sins, envy itself. If it fully entered this dimension, then catastrophe would no longer be a possibility. It would be unavoidable. Granfell Claude Arpius Romeo stepped forward and demanded, Vangrith Tom, what exactly are you trying to prove? The question struck Vangrith like a direct physical blow, and for an instant, he looked shaken. Even if you trade your body to a demon just to gain power, Granfell Claude Arpius Romeo pressed, his voice sharp and unrelenting. Will that truly give you the recognition you've been starving for all this time? The great demon's claw curled around Vangrith's body, as if claiming him. Yet even then, the mage's eyes were drawn elsewhere, to the pale blue flames wrapping around Granfell Claude Arpius Romeo like something unreal. Why is your hunger for validation this overwhelming? Granfell Claude Arpius Romeo asked. As the demon lifted him into the air, Vangrith choked, then forced out an answer through his pain. His mind flashed back to the magic tower, to those elegant halls filled with polished stone and quiet malice, where whispered gossip lingered in the air more sharply than any blade.